Alright, so this will be a quick update. I think, hopefully, we're going to cover two things. Um, One is going to be building selection and what I've fixed there, and also sharding, and basically how the world became split up and how that all works. So, you noticed in the last video I had trouble selecting some buildings, so that's been reworked to some extent. The algorithm for finding buildings that are selected hasn't, but a bunch of other things, bugs, which are kind of interesting. So I'm going to talk about them. Were fixed, so now you can select anything. So in terms of what was broken before, and just to demonstrate, like I can build towers anywhere I want now. There's no problems, and what this is doing is it's actually creating a tower on the server, and then the server says, hey, the client doesn't know about this tower, and it sends it back. So that whole loop is working again. In terms of what was broken, it's actually kind of funny. So there was a huge list of things, like if I make this bigger. So in terms of like why you were able to select a building before and not create a tower, I have this notion of shards in the game, and essentially the world is split up by these things called I call shards. So if we look at this tool I have, so let's start WebStorm. And the music makes it a little bit more exciting. So, okay. No, we want this one. Open this. Okay, so this is my shard viewer. This is connecting to the game backend, and essentially we can see that the whole world is covered with this color, and that's because there's only one shard right now. I'm running the game locally. I only have a few, 100 towers, maybe a few hundred creeps. There's no reason for the game to be sharded. It can just be one giant world. Additionally, this connects to the backend and shows me all of the clients and where they are. So we can see that I'm in Pittsburgh here, and if I move this thing around, the world is going to update, and you can see how the square moved. It should be moving, but anyway, this is showing me the shard, how the shards are split up. So let me demonstrate real quick, because it's going to provide some context into what the issue was. So if I go to game tick here, what I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to say that if the game tick is more than 5 milliseconds, because right now I think it's so I can see the stats for the current shard. There's almost 3,000 creeps, 500 towers, and the current tick time is 50 milliseconds. So we're going to say that if the shard gets beyond 5 milliseconds tick time, we have to split it, right? So I'm going to restart the game engine. I have a very fast iteration time. And we'll see now that it's gone ahead and it's split the shards. And we come in here to the map viewer. So now we can see that the world is split up into different shards. I'm testing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and this purple's kind of hard to see through, so let's reload and get a different color. Maybe I can get like a light green. That's a dark green. Okay, whatever. So we can see that we've created a bunch of shards right through Pittsburgh. So the reason for that is because there's a bunch of creeps in these different areas. Now, the problem was why you could click a building and not create a tower before was that I forgot to take a lock before I do the shard split. And you can look up like software development locks and what they are. But what had happened was I created overlapped shards, and that screwed up the geospatial query. So if like a tower is here and it says, oh, or a person is here and they can see this part of the map, and then there's a tower in that area, the query was broken because the shards were overlapped. So adding a lock there fixed that. In terms of like joining shards, sometimes a shard is really small, and maybe all the creeps in there die, so it doesn't need to exist anymore. It doesn't need to be a CPU dedicated to it. We'll join the shards, and that was also broken because I wasn't adding routes for the creeps into the final shard, and then the creeps would stop spawning. So that was fixed. Let's see, what else can we talk about? Actually, I think I talk worse when I write things down. But anyway, um, the building selection wasn't great before because I was only sorting things within a segment, which is like a buffer in the world of a set of buildings, which aren't necessarily geographically related. It's just like a list of buildings that are buffered at once to the GPU. And whenever you would click and your mouse cursor was like through a couple buildings, or the ray through the screen went through a couple buildings, I would sort those correctly. But if that ray went through buildings on different buffers, I wouldn't sort the results of the buffer. So that was fixed. So that's another reason why building selection works. And what else is going on? So the last one, which is probably the most interesting, is whenever you would go and click on a building, sometimes nothing would happen. So TDWorld's a bit unique in that I have to generate all of the polygons. Like, these aren't like models that someone created in like Blender or Maya 3D or something, right? I take data and I generate them. So turn the music down because it's annoying. What was happening was that you would have a building that was in a location, and I would think that its corresponding tower was somewhere else due to a bug. And what that meant was you would get something like this. So I have this screenshot of when I was debugging it, and essentially these red lines are helping me see where the game thinks the building is and where the tower is. And you can see sometimes they were very far apart. And what that meant was it broke my building selection because the game would think that this was, essentially it's one giant mesh, one giant game object. So you see this like thin blue line here. If you try to click anything in this square, the game would think you're trying to click this giant building, but really it's just parts of a building that split really far apart because of this. Basically, it was a race condition. Actually, it better be described as a name-spacing issue. So for some reason, the data that I get is bad, and IDs are only really guaranteed to be unique in that tile that I get. I get the tile data from a few different sources, but one of them gives me kind of dirty data. So I had to namespace basically a data structure in the client side, the side that runs on your phone. So whenever I go to see, hey, is there a tile for this feature ID, or a building for this feature ID, then I get one that's in the tile here and not somewhere else on the map. Yeah, and all those coming together means that now building selection works. I can build the towers and get the fancy colors and everything works. Oh, the other issue was that shape builders, and I have a bunch of things in one update, so I probably should update more often. But the libgdx is kind of shitty, and thread safe. It has some utilities where you can just like create a box. It's really useful when you don't have models made yet for certain things. Like I do. I don't have models for towers, for example, so I just draw a box there. I draw a circle for a creep until you have actual models for them. And they're not what's called thread safe. So if we look into here, so the base class for like building, here it is, box shape builder. For like building boxes, for example, they have these things called protected static final. So essentially, if I was creating a box on one thread and creating a box on another thread, I would end up with meshes that like are connected that are a mile apart. There's no reason for this to be like this. This is just bad engineering. You can optimize. You can get the same optimizations they're getting here by getting rid of all of the statics and using the provider pattern or something. But anyway, what we've done right now, so I can keep my nice debugging utilities, is I have a common class. If I want to build shapes, I have to remember to go through the shape builder thread safe. It's just stupid. Yeah, and another thing that I added for myself was the ability to see shards in the game world. So I don't know if I'm going to keep this yet, but essentially, right now, while creeps can move across shards, you can see these lines are representing essentially where a shard begins and ends. See, it goes on forever in either direction. If we look at the game map, this is what you're looking at essentially. And you can build towers and connect creeps through shards. You know, that all works fine. So I can say like, here's a tower, and you get a tower, and they get linked, right? They're linked now. You can see this road here. And the creeps will go in between shards, no problem. You can't shoot across shards. The rendering part here will sometimes show that because I haven't finished implementing that replication of how the backend works. But the thing is, I need to decide if I'm going to keep this limitation and figure out how to make the world truly seamless, because you can't shoot across them. So if I don't figure that out, that would mean that there would sometimes just be a wall here in the world where you couldn't shoot across. Now, the only reason that I just don't go and fix it, and let's just build a tower here to shoot these guys. The only reason I don't just go and fix it is it seems like a neat game mechanic. The shards can move. Right now they're not moving, but you might wake up one day and there'll be this wall here next to your tower, and you won't be able to go and launch this attack maybe that you wanted to. Actually, it's not really a great way to put it. Maybe you wouldn't be able to defend yourself because people could potentially move their creeps up right next to your tower on the other side of the shard and then attack at once. So it's an interesting game mechanic in that the shard moves around. So if I find a way to fit the game in an interesting way, I may just keep that limitation and not restructure things. I would also have to find a way to render them properly. This like stack of lines I have isn't great. But yeah, that's pretty much the update. Building selection and shards. So let me know what you think. If you have any ideas regarding like the sharding thing. Maybe it's just a terrible experience and I needed to do more work on the back end. Or maybe I should find an interesting way to fit into the story of the game, which I haven't done asked yet. So yeah, thanks for watching.